Hello and welcome. It's your boy Hardcorn, and today we're going to review and analyze Emily Simmons. We'll be going in depth on her skills and synergy that they bring, along with the supporter setup and theory. Emily is a ranged character designed to keep people at bay and kite enemies like nobody's business. She has very few melee solutions that can be used, and even then they're very situational. This is a game where 80% of all attacks coming at you are melee, and Emily manages to trivialize every single encounter with them. Here's some history on her. Emily's an original character made for Action Taimanin. She's described as an anti-nomad UFS scientist, and during the story she meets Asagi's team and works with them. She continues to collaborate and lend her knowledge of medicine and robotics to further the Taimanin efforts. She also continues to study Asagi and the abilities of the Taimanins so she can one day replicate it. Supposedly she's got some sort of photographic memory along with parallel cognition, meaning she can multitask to actually productive effect, but that's really all there is about her. She's not an incredibly deep character. Emily's costumes lean towards her having HP and critting. The HP is very good because she's a frail ranged character, and also her costumes don't give her too much defense. Damage reduction or mitigation or avoidance is key there, so she just doesn't pop. Her crit getting jacked up like that through the costumes is always a really good benefit because it means she's going to do some nice hard damage on every hit when it crits. If you haven't checked out my other video featuring Asagi, there's a little link to click on and it'll explain some of these choices and aspects. Emily will never physically touch an enemy with her attacks unless it's a desperate situation. So all our buffs are to speed her up and get her out of that situation, or slow down the enemy enough or severely impair them so she can leave. A lot of her attacks knock down, knock up, stun, slow, you name it, so that she can't get hurt. It cannot be stressed enough because she's just so squishy. Yes, she can improve her stats with skill training, but you just gotta put some girth behind her in case of emergency. Emily defends herself by having her little drone pal fire at a targeted enemy until it dies. It's about as simple as hold the attack button down and run away from the enemy. It's a 100% brain dead simple plan and has super duper synergy with one of her other skills, homing bullets. In reality, you could just tape your attack button down and a directional stick in a direction you want and watch as she clears for you. They thought of that. Action Taimanin doesn't have any sort of auto mode you can just fire and forget while you check something else. You need to be engaged and play the game. Emily manages to add that function in with her signature Taimanin art, Zero System. Zero System lets you input zero effort in farming content. For a slight damage penalty, Emily will consistently attack and fire at enemies without your input. Equipping Zero System also activates homing bullets every single time it's off of cooldown, an unnoted but very beneficial side effect. Zero System lists as drones perform automatic normal attacks of 50% damage. At one supporter it's a 20% damage increase, 2 supporters has her automatically move to the next area, and 3 supporters is another 30% damage increase. The damage cut is negated by playing normally. This skill also is active at all times, so when a Taimanin is knocked down, they can't attack until they get back up. Zero System lets Emily constantly attack regardless of her status. It's quite strong since you can effectively build HP and have her hold still while all the enemies attack her, and she has invincibility on the ground for a moment while everything around her is damaged. Zero System isn't some sort of slow firing thing either. It's firing something like 10 rounds a second and it doesn't miss. Since there's always so many hits with it, there's bound to be a bunch of crits too. So when Emily builds up in the critting, we'll just zap enemies down like the total goddess that she is. It can't be forgotten though that she's always locked in and locked onto an enemy until she's out of range or the enemy dies. When she's targeted an enemy, it's usually in a grid of threats, aka the most dangerous one in proximity to her. That means she'll target the boss and will not stop firing at it until it's dead. That's what you want Zero System to do. That laser focus of Zero System is great to kite a singular enemy, but bosses love bringing in their own mooks, so the trash will come in and just start striking her. And that's where she's got to have contingencies in place for just such an occasion. Emily's ability Homing Bullets activates on the hold of the attack button, and like I said before, it activates instantly with Zero System equipped. It's a very flexible skill that offers a major amount of damage on a decent cooldown. Now, one green reduces the cooldown by 20%, one blue increases the damage by 25%, and one red adds 2 more missiles for a total of 7 hits. This means that even if you go deep on one color with Emily, you're still going to get one of 3 very nice benefits on a skill that hits everything. This skill is just absolutely perfect on her, and they make it that way so it's a must slot ability on her, or else you're just going to lose out on a lot of damage or safety. Safety in that a hit from a singular missile gives a little stun on mooks and medium-sized enemies. There's no reason not to take this, and it makes it one of her absolute core skills. There's a pattern with many of Emily's other skills, in that they're activated on some sort of a combination between holding, double tapping, or simultaneous tapping of the dodge button. They knew from conception that your attack button is going to be busy holding something, so you're going to get busy dodging at the same time, and it's accommodated very well. Her skill Axe Impact is activated by holding down the dodge button for a moment, and then a huge axe comes and strikes the enemies. At 1 red, it projects spinning blades around Emily while it charges to keep enemies at bay and do some nice damage. While 2 reds reduce the cooldown by 20%, then 3 reds increase the critical damage by 250%. I've seen this thing do about 225,000 damage in crits on my own time, and that's baby number city, folks. My Emily isn't built well either, and that attack when it crits just deletes whatever is unfortunate enough to be under the axe of the executioner. Axe Impact is an incredibly strong skill and is perfect for bursting. Even without a crit, the damage is incredibly high and will wipe out a chunk of a boss's super armor meter or just flat out delete it. It's got a bit of a sweet spot from what I can tell on where you want your enemy to be, well, in terms of where you cast the axe. You can get up close and personal to use it, but you can be interrupted if you don't have the 1 red benefit since it has little hits to stun the enemy for a moment. You also can't have her cast it from miles away. Its effective range is about 2.5 meters. Aegis Tackle is Emily's only true melee skill. She in fact comes right out and tackles the enemy to deal damage, and it's a legit life-risking tackle. In the fact it's risky because she gets some very powerful buffs and she puts herself in incredible danger. A main green supporter gives her 15% increased speed for 10 seconds. A main blue gives her 15% damage taken reduced for 10 seconds, and a main red gives her increased critical rate for 20% for 10 seconds. An Aegis Tackle comes on a 14-second cooldown too, so after skill training, you can have this buff up nearly all the time. 10 seconds is a lot of time for missions that last no more than 2 minutes. This skill is not activated automatically with Zero System. You still need to dodge, then press attack to get it to activate, and it's very picky on activating and targeting as well when you have Zero System equipped. It still shouldn't dissuade you from usage though, as it will occur and you'll be seeing the benefits from your buffs immediately. It's good to take risks, but when they don't turn out so good, it's good to have a backup. Healing Shield is, well, Emily's healing skill. It activates on an extreme dodge with an 11-second cooldown, so you'll be seeing these heals very often. With 3 greens, the amount of HP restored per tick is increased by 100%, 3 blues increases the range of the field by 50%, and 3 reds increases the frequency of the healing ticks by 75%. These are all nice benefits to have for a monocolor build, but there's something to note about how Healing Shield works. When she does an extreme dodge, the skill's name pops up, and then wherever she lands, when the dodge completes, is where the field's gonna occur. Now, the healing doesn't happen immediately either. The circle comes up and then a light shines down after 3/4 of a second, and then that's when the healing ticks begin. Usually when I've activated an extreme dodge move with a character, I'm trying to move out of wherever that attack just occurred so I can get into a more favorable position. The default size of the ring has a good area to it, but with Emily's squishiness, I'm not staying there. Healing Shield really feels like a sort of stand your ground type of skill, where she can tank hits from enemies and set up something like Axe Impact or Gravity Hold, and you have sustain while the attack goes off. This probably may see usage in the arena, but I don't PvP very well, or barely at all, so I couldn't tell you. Counter Bomb Trap is one of the few cases of counterattacking in the game. It's one of the few contingencies that rewards a hit, and it's got some very beneficial buffs, and it's an interesting way to play. You'll be putting yourself in a decent amount of danger since it activates after damage, no matter how much it was. Now with an 8-second base cooldown, it's really nifty, so you'll see a lot of use out of it no matter what. Just don't lean on it or else you'll find yourself with a lot of lower health than you anticipated. There are a few supporters that increase potion spawn along with HP recovery from potions, so that's a bit of a thought to using a build with this attack. This attack is super duper fast when activated, and it knocks down like a bad mother for sure. At 2 greens, Emily gains a 10% damage up for 5 seconds, 2 blues is increased particle charge by 3%, and 2 reds snares enemies for 5 seconds on activation. That snares for 5 seconds is nifty, as there's several snared and debuff supporters in circulation, but 5 seconds is a very small window, and Emily has some severe end lag on her dash, so if you wanted to use counter bomb stun to get in close for something like axe or ground shock, you'll nearly miss it or just miss it completely. It keeps the enemies at bay while you're kiting them, and when they get the eventual swipe on you. Personally, I'd rather avoid all damage together, and Emily rewards that for sure. Ground shock is a nice middle of the road debuffing attack that gives a nice AoE in front of Emily, and it's all in a nice package of 14 seconds. 2 greens knock down the enemy, 2 blues reduce enemy DP by 20% for 10 seconds, and 2 reds reduces the enemy speed by 20% for 10 seconds. They're all very useful, but not as useful as what's actually happening. Emily floats up in the air to do this attack, which protects her from 70% of all threats. What it also does is abuse that enemies will try to run to the point where your character is standing and stand about 1.5 meters away, so her last position will be there on the ground. Then she's now in the air and dropping bombs on some fools and getting away with it. Being airborne is a small but noticeable aspect to improving longevity when using Emily. Her cooldown though starts ticking the moment she begins rising, so if she gets interrupted in any way during the rising and throwing animation and the bombs haven't left her grasp, she'll fall straight down into the knockdown position. It's a similar case on any move that a character has that puts them airborne. More and more enemies as the game progresses will be able to swing up enough to hit her in the air. It's happening already on a small scale, so be mindful of your setups to make sure you can pull off the big air dunks. Gravity Hold is a strange yet resourceful tool. Emily fires a ball of lightning at a targeted enemy, and this ball will continue to travel until it reaches its maximum distance. This means that multiple enemies can be hit with it, and can possibly be hit multiple times if the situation is set up right. 1 blue supporter knocks up enemies on impact, 2 blues recover 3% of damage given as HP, and 3 blues is increased critical rate by 50%. This is an extremely strong tool on a relatively short cooldown. She's also got a bit of tracking with it by the fact you can be turned away 180 degrees from the enemies, and Emily still can sometimes turn herself around and fire it at them. With all 3 blues invested, it's a very safe way to complete missions. Even in my limited arena adventures, I've seen Emily users run this skill. It's just flat out good no matter where you take it. Also, that 3% heal is taken from every hit. Say there's 5 enemies. If she has a 50k crit on each enemy struck by the ball, she's healing them for the damage done to them on each hit. That's 1500 HP recovered on every single hit. That's also not counting the other side benefits, like she's bowled over the entire group of enemies and slowed them way down. And also that her regular attack is happening at the same time, so something is always consistently taking damage. Also, the fact that she's now topped up and is getting away from her enemies, she's going to fire another lightning ball again. The knock up with 1 blue also interrupts enemy skills that aren't bosses. It just does not stop getting better here, folks. Round Slicer is another one of her defensive skills. She activates it on an extreme dodge, and a set of rapidly rotating blades comes to her aid by spinning around her person. 1 green increases the area of effect for the blades, 2 is reducing damage taken by 50% while it's active, and 3 is damage increased by a whole 150%. It's a very situational move that can see use on enemies that barely or don't move at all, along with enemies that are slowed down. It's got a little bit of hit stun, but anything with super armor is going to get past the blades and give her a walloping. I've got a feeling this attack has some arena use, but it's in very niche builds and it's nothing to really build upon. Drone Shocker is her 81 skill, and I don't have that yet on her since we're only looking from 1 to 75. My impressions though are that its usage is to impair enemies and have Emily escape. 2 of a singular color to gain an effect is alright, but the effects being that 2 greens is having the drone advance toward the enemy, 2 blues knocks back on attack, 2 reds reduces speed by 20% for 10 seconds on all enemies hit. Means you really want to use this on a monocolored build if you've got 4 skill slots, but I'd go with blue on it since I like anything that knocks over an enemy for a moment so I can go set up something. To wrap on Emily, she's an incredibly straightforward character. She has to be, because what lies behind her is certain death. Emily's skills and method of attacking make her one of the strongest characters in the game. She's all about kicking back, relaxing, and doing tons of damage. The stress really is only kicking in when you see a large chunk of her HP disappear, and even then she's got the tools to recover it all back. To be considered the character that ushers in automatic mode, she's gotta be super strong, and Gremory has spared no expense on making her an absolute powerhouse. Emily specializes in single target attacking, and she does it so incredibly well. Even her area of effect attacks are nothing to scoff at, but they're done better elsewhere. Her absolute laser focus on damaging one person is absolutely incredible, and along with her ability to escape and have it covered, makes it so that everything she does is very safe in a variety of situations. Obviously, her being so good at single target elimination, at range too, and a mediocre set of AoE, makes it so that only her kiting playstyle is viable in PvE. If her enemy is within melee range and her contingencies are on cooldown, she's going to get super hurt or she's just flat out done for. It's all about the keep away with Emily, until something drastic changes with Zero System, or better yet how she attacks on a conceptual level, she's going to be at the top for a very long time. Ooh lord, it wasn't that something. Thanks for coming on out and learning with your boy Hardcorn. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, leave a comment too because I'd love to hear from you guys and maybe get some ideas from where to go next. And as always, I'll see you next time.